The Galactic Council chamber floated in the orbit of Veltor, a world bathed in twin sunlight, where gold and glass walls shimmered with alien pride. Hundreds of species filled the grand hall, each one believing themselves part of the highest power in the galaxy. For centuries, they had ruled through fear, through laws written in arrogance and sealed with violence. But that day, the chamber was silent. Every delegate could feel it. Something was coming. Without warning, the sky above their council dome flickered, and every holoscreen across the galaxy switched to one image, the crest of Earth. No music, no warning tones, just a quiet hum that made even the bravest generals shiver. The speaker of the council, a tall creature with silver eyes and scaled skin, raised his trembling hand. "Open the line," he said, his voice breaking slightly. The signal connected, and the room filled with the image of a single human face. Cold, calm, and unblinking, the man stared at the camera. His eyes had no hatred, no mercy, just a steady look that made everyone uneasy. When he spoke, his voice echoed in every language of the galaxy. Peace is no longer requested. For a long moment, no one moved. The silence was so heavy that it felt like the stars themselves had stopped burning. The speaker finally stammered, "Human representative, the war was a mistake. The destruction of your colony was not our command. We can negotiate, but the transmission didn't respond." Instead, something strange began to happen outside the windows of the council chamber. The stars, bright and eternal, started to vanish, one by one, like candles being snuffed out. Delegates gasped. The sensors screamed warnings. The speaker turned to his aides. "What is happening? Is it an eclipse? A weapon?" But before anyone could answer, the lights dimmed, and a shadow fell across the council world. Then, through the darkness, enormous shapes began to move. At first, they looked like small black dots in the distance, but they grew larger with terrifying speed. They weren't asteroids, and they weren't ships the council had ever seen before. These were colossal, sleek dreadnoughts, machines forged from obsidian metal and silent fire. Each was the size of a moon, gliding through space with no sound, no visible thrusters, just pure, dark power. The alien leaders stared in disbelief. The council's own fleet, stationed around Veltor, was gone. No distress signals, no combat reports. The human ships had appeared in their place, completely surrounding their capital world. Every sensor officer shouted readings, but nothing made sense. The human ships didn't register on energy scans. It was as if they were ghosts, invisible to technology, yet real enough to blot out the suns. How did they get here?" one general whispered. The speaker's voice broke again. "Impossible," he muttered. "Earth doesn't have this kind of power." But they did. They had built it in silence, in shadows, away from the council's eyes. Years of exile had not broken humanity, it had hardened them. For decades, the council mocked them, restricted their colonies, and laughed at their primitive war machines. They forgot that humans were creatures of survival, of vengeance, and of patience. The screens flickered again, and the same human face returned. But this time, behind him, a sea of human officers stood in perfect formation. Their faces were blank, their eyes like frozen steel. "We asked for peace," the human said slowly. "You answered with fire." His tone was not loud, but it carried across every system. "You burned our skies. You erased our cities. You called us unstable, violent, unfit for the stars. Now you will understand what those words truly mean." The speaker tried to interrupt, but the human's voice cut through him like a blade. "You begged us to join your council, to follow your laws. We did. You betrayed us. We will not repeat history." Outside the chamber, the first of the human dreadnoughts moved closer, its shadow swallowing the council's tower entirely. It didn't fire a single shot, yet every alien could feel the pressure in their bones. The ship's surface shifted like liquid metal, revealing thousands of glowing red lines, each one a weapon bay. Across the hall, the delegates panicked. Some tried to flee, others cried for mercy. The speaker raised his hands, shouting for calm, but his voice was lost in the chaos. He turned to the screen again, his scales glistening with fear. Humanity, listen to reason. We can stop this. We can start again. But there was no response. The human fleet stayed silent, hovering like executioners awaiting a signal. Then, without sound or warning, one of the moons orbiting Veltor disappeared. Not exploded, disappeared. The Council's sensors registered a gravitational surge, then nothing. A collective gasp filled the chamber. They erased it, someone whispered. Not destroyed, erased. The speaker fell to his knees. The fear in his eyes reflected the truth the Council had refused to see for generations. Humanity was no longer the weak, emotional race they once mocked. They had become something else, something beyond understanding, beyond mercy. The holoscreen flickered again, and the human face leaned closer. "This is not war," he said quietly. "This is the consequence of peace denied." The image vanished, leaving the Council surrounded by silence. Outside, the human fleet turned slowly, forming a perfect circle around Veltor. Each ship pulsed with a deep red light, like the heartbeat of a giant. The speaker whispered to himself, "Judgment." The word echoed through the chamber, carried by trembling voices. The galaxy had begged for peace too late. Humanity had come, not to negotiate, not to conquer, but to judge. The sun of Veltor barely broke through the thick darkness now spreading across the system, its light swallowed by the endless shadows of the human fleet. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council world had no dawn. The twin suns rose, but their glow could not reach the ground. The Council city, once the pride of the galaxy, lay under a haunting twilight. Every building hummed with panic, every screen flickered with emergency transmissions from dying colonies. Reports flooded in. Human ships had appeared over 40 worlds at once, each fleet arriving without warning, without a trace on hyperspace routes. No warp signatures, no engine trails. They simply appeared, silent and unstoppable. The alien population screamed for help, but no one dared send aid. Even the most powerful navies were frozen in orbit, afraid to move, afraid to attract human attention. The Council's Grand Fleet, the symbol of their rule, had not been heard from since it encountered humanity near the barren moon of Dural 5. 2,000 ships gone, vanished like smoke. Some said they were destroyed instantly. Others whispered that humans had taken them, their crews erased from existence, their vessels absorbed into the growing black armada that now filled the stars. Inside the Council chamber, fear replaced arrogance. Leaders who once laughed at Earth now hid behind guards, whispering among themselves. The speaker stood before the assembly, his voice trembling as he read the final communiques. "They refuse to speak," he said, eyes flicking across the holograms. "Every message we send vanishes. Every call for peace is unanswered." The chamber erupted into noise. "We must act," shouted one delegate. "Send envoys," cried another. But the speaker only shook his head. "They have already seen our envoys." None returned. The memory was fresh. The last diplomatic ship, carrying the Council's finest ambassadors, had entered human-controlled space 3 days ago. Its last transmission was a single sentence: "They do not want peace." After that, only static. The panic grew worse when the first images came through from the border worlds. Entire cities had gone dark. Planetary defense grids stood silent, disabled without a single shot fired. In one broadcast, an alien governor looked up as a vast human ship blocked out the sun. "They are everywhere," he whispered before the feed cut off. The Council tried to organize a response, but their commands came too late. The humans weren't destroying worlds. They were surrounding them, cutting them off, isolating them, waiting. The terror wasn't in their weapons. It was in their silence. No speeches, no threats, no demands. Only the quiet presence of those enormous black ships hanging in the void, like watchers from some ancient judgment. 4 years, the Council had mocked humanity's emotional nature. They said humans were too reactive, too passionate, too unstable to join the higher powers. Yet now, it was the Council who trembled, their hearts breaking under the weight of dread. They sent scouts to study the new fleet. Only one returned, and the report it carried chilled even the most hardened warlords. The scout captain's face appeared on the holoscreen, pale and shaking. "Their ships don't use normal energy," he said. "We detected no core, no power source. It's like they're alive. The metal bends and moves, like it's breathing." When asked what he saw inside, his voice broke. "We saw human faces, in the hulls. Frozen. Watching us." The feed ended, and the captain was never seen again. In the following days, entire sectors surrendered without a single battle. Some thought submission might spare them. But the humans never landed, never occupied, never responded. They just stayed, an unending wall of black steel surrounding each planet, silent and still. It was as if humanity wanted the galaxy to sit in its own fear, to taste the same helplessness Earth once felt when the Council burned their colonies and called it justice. On Veltor, the speaker stood by the viewing window of the Council spire, watching the distant silhouette of the largest human dreadnought. Its shadow stretched across continents, turning oceans into mirrors of darkness. He whispered to his aide, "Do you think they'll destroy us?" The aide, a young diplomat with green crystalline eyes, didn't answer. She simply stared at the ship. "I don't think they need to," she said softly. "They've already won." That night, the Council ordered the evacuation of nearby systems. Civilian ships filled the skies, fleeing in every direction. But one by one, they vanished. The navigation network stopped responding. Even hyperspace routes began to collapse, each one blocked by human interference fields. The galaxy itself felt smaller now, trapped under humanity's watch. No one could escape. The fear became so deep that planets began to riot, armies turned on their own leaders, and entire civilizations started destroying their own records, hoping humanity would spare them if their crimes were forgotten. And yet, through all this, not a single human message came. Not a single threat. No statement of war or peace. Just silence. That silence became more frightening than any weapon. Children woke crying from nightmares of ships blotting out their suns. Scientists spoke in whispers about human evolution, about something changing in their DNA. Theories spread that humanity had ascended beyond biology, beyond mortality. That what the galaxy now faced was not an army, but something new. On the seventh day, the Council held an emergency session. The speaker faced the assembly one last time. "We underestimated them," he said quietly. "They are not what they were. We thought they sought revenge. But this is something greater. They are rewriting the meaning of fear." Outside the window, the Black Fleet shifted, its formation tightening into a perfect ring around the planet. The speaker's voice cracked. "They have come not for war, but for remembrance." The stars flickered again. Across every world under human watch, night fell at once. And in that shared darkness, one signal pulsed across every channel. A heartbeat sound, slow and deep, echoing in perfect rhythm. No message followed. No translation appeared. Just that steady, endless thump. Some said it was human ships sinking their systems. Others believed it was something worse, the heartbeat of Earth itself, reminding the galaxy that humanity was awake again, and this time, peace would not come through mercy. The silence that followed stretched across the stars like a suffocating veil. Every species, every leader, every frightened citizen waited for a message that never came. The human fleet continued to hover in the black void, motionless, cold, and watching. Across the galaxy, whispers turned into prayers, and prayers turned into screams. Planets that once mocked humanity now begged for its mercy. On the fourth rotation after the blackout, the Galactic Council assembled once more inside their trembling golden chamber. The air felt heavy, thick with fear. Every alien delegate sat in silence, unable to look at the holoscreen that displayed the image of Earth's crest, still flickering faintly, as if it were alive. The Speaker of the Council stood at the center podium, his silver scales dull under the dim lights. "We must contact them again," he said, his voice shaking. "We must show regret. Humanity may listen if we kneel." The word kneel, unthinkable for the proud rulers of the stars, echoed in the chamber like thunder. None objected. Pride had already died days ago. A communication link was opened. The holosignal stretched across thousands of light years, deep into the cold silence where the human fleet's command ship lingered, the Nemesis Prime. When the link connected, the council gasped. A single figure stood in front of a massive window overlooking a dead starfield. A human, wearing a long black uniform lined with silver markings, his face hidden under the shadow of the window's light. The speaker immediately began to speak, desperation leaking from every word. Human representative, please, hear us. The war was not of our will. A faction within our ranks acted without authorization. We seek peace, true peace. His voice cracked as he lowered his head. Our people are afraid. The galaxy trembles. Please, stop this. The human didn't move. For long moments, the only sound was the faint hum of the hololink. Then, he finally turned. The council froze. His eyes glowed faintly blue, emotionless, like the cold of space. You seek peace, he said slowly, when victory is no longer yours. His tone was calm, too calm. You call it a mistake now that your fleets are dust, now that your worlds burn under your own fear. The speaker tried to speak again, but the human's voice overpowered his. Do you think we forgot? He continued. Do you think we forgot the day you stood in this same chamber and called us animals of emotion? The day you laughed when you burned Mars and said it was mercy? The speaker lowered his eyes, tears glinting on his scaled face. We were wrong, he whispered. We were blind. The human stepped closer to the camera, his expression blank, his words cutting through every mind that listened. Peace is not granted through words, he said. It is earned through understanding. He paused, then spoke a phrase that made every heartbeat stop. You will understand what peace means to humanity. Before the speaker could ask what that meant, the screen went black. No signal, no trace. The transmission cut cleanly, leaving only the faint sound of static that echoed in the chamber. Moments later, every world under the council's control received a single image. It was not a message, not a declaration. It was a vision of human ships descending through the clouds of dead worlds, their shadows stretching across deserts and oceans. No weapons were fired. Instead, the ships released thousands of smaller drones, silver, silent, and beautiful. They descended on the ruins of the planets humanity once owned, Mars, Titan, and Luna's colonies. The drones began to rebuild them, piece by piece, turning ashes into light. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't here to conquer. They were reclaiming what was stolen. They didn't want peace with the Council. They wanted peace for themselves, a peace the galaxy had denied them. Panic spread through the Council worlds. Alien leaders sent messages begging for negotiation, offering entire planets as tribute. None were answered. On the Outer Rim, an alien admiral attempted a final act of defiance, sending a fleet of 100 ships to intercept a human convoy near the border system of XYR. The battle lasted 12 seconds. The admiral's last transmission was horrifying. They aren't ships, they are something else, living. The signal ended abruptly, followed by silence. The Council knew resistance was meaningless. The humans weren't fighting battles. They were sending a message through every vanished fleet. Each defeat was quiet, clean, absolute. On Veltor, the speaker's advisors begged him to flee. They will come here next, one cried. We must run. But the speaker shook his head. There is nowhere left to run. They control the void itself. He was right. Reports confirmed that hyperspace was no longer stable. The paths humans traveled through didn't exist in normal space. They were bending reality, using corridors unknown to science. The galaxy's greatest physicists tried to explain it, but every theory ended the same way, impossible. That night, the speaker stood by the great window of the Council's tower, watching as the first of the human ships entered the system's outer ring. He could see their lights blinking faintly, synchronized like a heartbeat. What do they want? He whispered. His aide hesitated before answering. Not war, speaker. I think they want the galaxy to feel what they once felt, helpless. The speaker's chest tightened. He thought of the videos from decades ago. Human cities burning under council bombardments, children crying for help that never came. He thought of the laughter that followed, the votes that called it necessary. Now, that laughter haunted him like a ghost. Hours later, the human fleet moved closer. No transmissions, no warnings. Their formation shifted, surrounding Veltor in a perfect sphere. Every satellite in orbit deactivated automatically. The Council's defense grid refused to respond. The entire planet was under a silent blackout. The speaker walked into the chamber one final time. His voice echoed weakly as he addressed the terrified assembly. "We are witnessing the end of arrogance," he said softly. "They are not our enemies. They are our reflection." Then, the ground trembled. The skies turned white, then black again. The holoscreens flashed to life one last time, showing the same human symbol as before. But this time, underneath it appeared a single sentence, written in every known language across the galaxy. It said, "We will show you what peace means." The council chamber fell silent. No one dared breathe. No one spoke. The speaker stared at the words until tears filled his eyes. Humanity had not come to destroy the galaxy. They had come to teach it. But what kind of peace could be born from terror? That question hung unanswered as the stars above Veltor disappeared behind the cold, unblinking gaze of the human fleet. The dawn never came to Veltor again. The twin suns still burned, but their light could no longer pierce the black curtain of human ships that surrounded the planet. Every sensor, every telescope, every communication relay, dead. The Council's capital world was cut off completely. To those trapped below, it felt like the universe itself had ended. But this was only the beginning. For humanity, the era of silence was over. Across the galaxy, strange things began to happen. Whole fleets vanished mid-flight, their signals blinking out one by one. Colonies that once thrived under the Council's control now sent desperate distress calls. "Black shadows in orbit, our stars are gone," before going silent forever. Every alien government demanded answers, but no one had them. The Council could no longer hide the truth. Humanity had returned from exile, and they wielded power beyond comprehension. On the 12th day after the blackout, a miracle, or a nightmare, occurred. An abandoned Council outpost in the Seren Belt detected a spatial distortion. The outpost scanners recorded something impossible, a planet appearing from nowhere. No warp jump, no energy surge, no gravitational shift. One moment, the system was empty. The next, there it was, blue oceans, green lands, and white clouds. The technicians stared in disbelief. The planet's coordinates matched one erased centuries ago. It was Earth. Humanity's home, gone from galactic records, had reappeared in the void. But it wasn't where it used to be. It now floated at the center of the galaxy, surrounded by the ruins of dead stars. It was as if humanity had moved their world itself. The Council was in chaos. The speaker demanded an explanation. How can an entire planet move across the galaxy? No one could answer. The scientists tried to calculate the energy required. It exceeded all known physics. Even black holes couldn't produce that kind of force. Some whispered that humanity had transcended technology, that their ships weren't built, but grown, powered by something no one could understand. In the following hours, every major network received a signal. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't even a transmission. It was music. Soft, haunting, human. A piano melody drifting through space, old and broken. For 10 minutes, it played across every channel in the galaxy. No words, no threats, just sorrow. Then the melody ended, replaced by a quiet human voice. "We are home." That was all it said. The message spread faster than light, carried by echoes in hyperspace itself. Every being who heard it felt the same chill. Humanity was not asking for peace anymore. They were declaring something greater, that they no longer needed the galaxy's permission to exist. Panic consumed the Council. Entire star systems fled from the central regions, fearing Earth's gravity would tear the galactic core apart. Armies assembled, but no one dared attack. How could they fight an enemy who had moved their own planet? The speaker called for an emergency meeting, but half the delegates never arrived. Their worlds had already surrendered, sending oaths of loyalty to the humans, hoping to be spared. The council chamber, once filled with arrogance, now echoed with fear. "We created this," the speaker whispered, his claws gripping the edge of his podium. "We called them monsters. And monsters they became." Outside Veltor's atmosphere, the human fleet began to move. Slowly, silently, the dreadnoughts shifted into formation. From the planet's surface, they looked like a black ring eclipsing both suns. The Council's defense commanders begged for permission to fire their remaining orbital cannons. The speaker refused. "Do you wish to anger them further?" he snapped. But it was already too late. One of the younger generals, desperate and terrified, gave the order himself. A barrage of plasma fire lit up the sky, streaking toward the nearest human ship. The beams hit and vanished. No explosion. No reflection. Just gone. As if the space they entered had swallowed them whole. Seconds later, a ripple of light flashed across the human dreadnought's surface. Then, a pulse, bright, silent, and blinding, swept across the planet. Every weapon, every engine, every shield stopped working instantly. Even the Council's life support systems flickered. Veltor was completely disarmed. The human fleet didn't attack. They didn't need to. A single act had rendered the mightiest world powerless. The speaker collapsed into his chair, his voice hollow. "They control the fabric of space itself," he muttered. Around him, terrified aides whispered legends. Rumors that the humans had found something during their exile. Some called it the core signal. Others called it the origin. A technology, or perhaps a consciousness, buried deep beneath Earth's crust. Something ancient, something not entirely human. It had given them power over gravity, energy, and even time itself. They hadn't just evolved, they had changed what it meant to be alive. Across the galaxy, more sightings were reported. Human ships emerging from invisible gateways, their hulls rippling like liquid night. They didn't follow hyperspace lanes or wormholes. They simply appeared wherever they wished. One alien admiral described it best before his fleet was erased: "They move like thoughts." No explosions, no debris, just disappearance. The galaxy was falling, not to invasion, but to despair. The Council finally voted to send a delegation to Earth. The speaker himself volunteered. "If this is judgment," he said, "then I will face it." The journey was long and silent. As their ship approached the new Earth, they saw something that defied imagination. A barrier of shimmering blue light surrounded the planet, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. When they entered, all their systems went offline. The ship was carried forward by invisible force until it landed on a vast plain of white stone. The air was breathable, the sky familiar. And there, standing in the distance, was a human figure waiting for them. He was tall, wearing a simple gray uniform with no insignia. His eyes were calm but unreadable. When the speaker approached, trembling, he bowed slightly. "I come on behalf of the Galactic Council," the alien said. "We seek peace." The human looked at him, then at the sky. "You seek what you never gave," he replied. "You speak of peace, but what you really want is safety." The speaker fell to his knees. "Please, what do you want from us?" The human didn't answer immediately. He walked closer, his shadow long across the stone. "We wanted to be left alone," he said softly. "You taught us that peace without respect is just silence before war. So now we have learned to speak in silence." He gestured toward the sky. Above them, the black shapes of the fleet glided in perfect harmony, surrounding the new Earth like guardians. "We do not rule," he said. "We remember." The speaker stared, tears forming in his eyes. "Then, what happens to us?" The human's expression didn't change. "That depends," he said. "Can you live knowing what you've done? Can you rebuild a galaxy that remembers fear?" Then he turned and began walking away, fading into the light. The council delegation stood in silence, surrounded by the hum of human ships, realizing the truth. Humanity had not returned for conquest. They had returned as something far worse, teachers of consequence. When the Council ship left Earth's orbit, every star seemed dimmer. And somewhere, deep in the void, the humans watched them go. They didn't speak. They didn't follow. They simply waited. Because humanity knew the galaxy would never forget again. The galaxy held its breath. Days turned into weeks, yet humanity made no move. The fleets stayed in formation, silent, unyielding, and omnipresent. Their black hulls reflected no light, and their movements defied reason. Entire civilizations stopped trade, stopped exploration, even stopped speaking publicly about the humans. Every transmission, every whisper that contained Earth's name seemed to vanish mid-signal, as if reality itself refused to let the galaxy talk about them. But the fear didn't fade. It grew. Because silence, when it lasts long enough, becomes terror. On Veltor, the speaker barely slept. He wandered the halls of the shattered council tower, staring at the once shining murals now cracked by time and war. His advisors had fled. Only a few aides remained, their eyes hollow, their faith in diplomacy long gone. They aren't attacking, one muttered, voice trembling. But they aren't leaving either. What are they waiting for? The speaker had no answer. He only looked up at the sky, where the giant human dreadnoughts still hovered. He could see their faint outlines blocking the suns, like mountains in the heavens. They are waiting, he whispered, for us to understand. That night, the stars above Veltor began to flicker, not from power outages or storms, but from movement. Thousands of smaller human vessels emerged from the massive dreadnoughts, gliding silently into the upper atmosphere. They didn't open fire. They didn't broadcast demands. Instead, they released something, small black orbs that floated down toward the cities. The orbs didn't explode or burn. They simply landed, softly embedding themselves into the ground, the rooftops, and the plazas. At first, people panicked, fleeing their homes. Then, the orbs began to glow with faint blue light. They projected images, memories. Across Veltor, the sky filled with visions from humanity's past. The burning of Mars. The destruction of the lunar colonies. The cries of dying children as alien ships rained fire on their cities. Every citizen of the Council now saw what they had done through human eyes. They saw the betrayal, the fear, the helplessness. On every screen, the same final image appeared. A small human girl clutching her mother's hand, staring up at alien warships descending from the sky. Her voice echoed across the planet, carried by every broadcast signal. "We asked for peace," she said softly. "You gave us fire." The effect was devastating. Entire species fell into silence, their arrogance shattered. The speaker dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "This is their judgment," he said, his voice breaking. "They're not here to destroy us. They're here to make us remember." Across the galaxy, the same event repeated. The black orbs appeared on thousands of worlds, each one showing the same message: humanity's memories, humanity's pain. The images were not faked. They were the truth the Council had erased from history. Every record the Council once buried was now exposed. The lies of necessary war and unstable humans, dissolved under the weight of undeniable evidence. Even the youngest species, who had never known the war, now saw it all. The galaxy wept. On the 5th day of the remembrance, a new signal spread, this time from humanity. It wasn't a hologram or speech. It was a single line of code, transmitted through every communications network. When decoded, it revealed a message in 1,000 languages: peace is not forgiveness. Then, suddenly, every system's power grid surged. All energy readings skyrocketed, then dropped to zero. Every ship, every city, every machine stopped working. A universal blackout. Panic spread like wildfire. People screamed that humanity had unleashed a weapon. But the blackout didn't destroy, it paused. For exactly 60 seconds, the entire galaxy went dark. No light, no sound, no movement. The void was total. And then, one by one, power returned. Every system came back online, every reactor reignited, every ship rebooted. Except now, each screen displayed a strange sight. The symbol of Earth glowing in white, surrounded by a phrase that pulsed softly, "You are alive. Remember why." It was not an attack. It was a warning, a reminder that humanity held the power to end everything, yet chose not to. The gesture was more terrifying than annihilation. The Council realized that humans didn't just win the war. They had transcended it. They could erase life in an instant, but they wanted something else, to make the galaxy live with its guilt. When the blackout ended, the Council reconvened one last time. The speaker stood before the few delegates who remained. His voice was low, fragile. "They could have destroyed us," he said. "But they didn't. They want us to remember that peace is not the absence of war, it's the presence of understanding." The hall was silent. No one dared speak. Even the most ruthless warlords sat in quiet despair. Outside, the human fleet began to move again. This time, they weren't surrounding worlds. They were leaving them. The ships rose higher, disappearing one by one into the void. But their departure was not relief, it was haunting. As they left, they released one final transmission, heard across every inhabited world. It was a voice, not angry, not cold, but sorrowful. "We once begged for peace," the voice said. "Now we offer silence. May you never force another species to learn our lesson." After that, the human fleet vanished. No trace, no signal, no radiation trail. It was as if they had never been there. But they left something behind. On every planet, every moon, every station that had seen their ships, a monument appeared. A smooth black obelisk, inscribed with glowing words in the native language of each world. The message was always the same: peace is not a gift. It is a responsibility. Decades passed. The Council slowly rebuilt, though it was no longer the same. The arrogance of power was gone. The speaker resigned, his health broken by guilt. Before leaving, he made one final statement, broadcast to the surviving members. "We were gods once," he said. "Then the humans showed us what gods look like when they bleed." In time, a new alliance formed, an alliance of repentance. It vowed never to repeat the mistakes of the past. They called it the Accord of Earthlight, named after the haunting glow that once filled their skies when humanity's fleet had hovered above. But no one knew if humans were watching. They never responded again. Some said they retreated to the far edge of the galaxy. Others believed they had ascended beyond the stars. Yet every now and then, a passing explorer would see strange lights in deep space, black shapes moving where no ships should be. And when they did, they always reported the same thing. No sound, no threat, no fire. Only the quiet hum of distant engines, like a heartbeat in the dark. Humanity's silence had become eternal, and the galaxy would never stop hearing it. The years that followed were strange, almost unreal. The galaxy, once loud and alive with the noise of ambition, commerce, and endless political rivalry, had fallen into quiet reflection. The Council no longer ruled, it merely advised. Entire species turned inward, fearing that even the echo of arrogance might bring the humans back. The obelisks left behind by the fleet still stood on every world, unbreakable and unmovable. Scientists tried to study them, but no matter what tools they used, the structures refused to yield even a single fragment. They were smooth, cold, and humming with a faint energy that no one could identify. Many civilizations began to worship them, calling them the witness stones. To some, they were symbols of peace. To others, they were warnings carved by gods of vengeance. Yet across the galaxy, one truth remained: no one dared touch Earth again. But time has a way of dulling fear. As decades turned to centuries, new generations arose. Ones who had never seen the human fleets, who only heard the stories from trembling elders. To them, the idea of humanity's return felt like an old myth, exaggerated through the years. The new council, rebuilt under a gentler name, the Intergalactic Union, began to restore what was lost. Trade routes reopened. Fleets were rebuilt, not for war but for exploration. Slowly, hope began to replace fear. But deep down, Everyone knew the silence of the humans was not forgiveness, it was observation. Then, something happened that shattered that fragile peace. On the edge of the Perseus Rift, a mining expedition stumbled upon an artifact buried in the remains of a dead world. It wasn't alien, it was human. A shard of black metal, marked with an Earth insignia and glowing with faint blue light. The miners tried to remove it. The moment they did, the planet's magnetic field collapsed. Communications across the sector died. The last transmission from the expedition was chilling. Something is waking up. After that, nothing. Within hours, the obelisks across the galaxy began to react. Their surfaces shifted, symbols glowing brighter. Every world felt a low-frequency hum that resonated deep within the ground. The council panicked, believing the humans were returning to finish what they started. Messages were sent toward Earth's coordinates, but they bounced back, redirected into nowhere. The stars near the galactic center began to dim again, one by one. The same nightmare was happening again, but this time, there was no demand, no message, no voice, only the growing presence of something vast moving through the void. On Veltor, now a broken relic of its former glory, the last surviving speaker, an old, frail version of the one who had once begged for mercy, sat by his window, staring at the night sky. He could see it. The stars were fading, just like before. "They are not angry," he whispered to his caretaker. "They are reminding us." The caretaker looked up, trembling. "Reminding us of what?" The speaker's old eyes glimmered faintly. "That peace is not the end of war, it's the start of understanding." And then the ships came again. They didn't arrive in formation this time. They appeared like shadows passing through reality itself, each one bending the stars around it. The humans hadn't changed. They had evolved further. Their ships no longer looked like vessels of metal and steel. They seemed alive, glowing faintly from within, their surfaces flowing like black oceans. The galaxy's strongest sensors couldn't measure them, and the few who tried to scan them described the same terrifying result. They exist in more than one place at once. The new council, desperate to prevent panic, sent out a broadcast. "To the beings of Earth, we seek communication, not conflict." The message went unanswered for hours. Then, across every channel, a voice spoke, human, calm, and heavy with quiet authority. "You touched what was meant to rest." The words were not a threat, but they chilled the blood of everyone who heard them. The speaker tried to respond, his frail voice cracking. "It was an accident. We didn't mean to," but the voice interrupted gently. "You always say that. You never mean to. Yet you always do." A silence followed, so deep that it felt alive. Then, the stars began to shift again, and a massive projection appeared in orbit above Veltor. It wasn't a weapon, it was a vision. The humans showed them something. A memory of the galaxy's first age, before the council, before the wars, before arrogance poisoned the stars. It showed how the humans had once helped build the very peace that was later used to exile them. They had guided civilizations, shared knowledge, and taught cooperation. But when humans became too strong, the galaxy turned against them out of fear. "You erased history," the voice said. "We preserved it." The images faded, replaced by a final one. A new galaxy, quiet and harmonious, where peace was earned through truth, not domination. "You are not our enemies," the voice continued. "You are our responsibility." Then, something miraculous happened. The obelisks on every world began to melt, transforming into beams of light that rose into the sky. When they reached orbit, they merged into a single shimmering wave that spread across the galaxy, restoring dying worlds, healing scars of war, and reviving the balance of energy that had been lost for centuries. Oceans refilled, atmospheres stabilized, and barren planets began to bloom with life. The humans had not returned for revenge. They had come to reset the galaxy's course. When the light faded, the fleets were gone again. No human ships remained, no transmissions followed. Only one message appeared, engraved into the soil where the obelisks once stood: peace must be lived, not remembered. The galaxy finally understood. For the first time, every species united, not under fear, but under purpose. They created a new alliance that vowed never to repeat the sins of the past, one that would not seek power, but harmony. They called it the Accord of Dawn. And at its founding, they left one empty chair in the center of their chamber, a chair made of black stone, left for the humans should they ever choose to return. Yet sometimes, in the deepest parts of space, travelers still reported strange encounters. They spoke of massive black silhouettes drifting near dying stars, watching quietly, never speaking. Some said they were human ships still patrolling the edges of reality. Others said they were something else entirely, the memory of humanity itself, ensuring the galaxy never forgot. And though centuries passed, one phrase was still whispered in every corner of every world whenever the stars dimmed: they remember everything. Centuries passed, but the memory of humanity never faded. The obelisks were gone, yet their absence felt louder than their presence ever did. Every civilization that rose under the Accord of Dawn carried in its heart the same vow: never to become what the Galactic Council once was. They built peacefully, traded fairly, and spread knowledge across the stars. Yet even as the galaxy flourished again, there lingered a shadow, an unspoken question. Were the humans still watching? The answer came when the stars began to whisper. Not voices, not sounds, but data, encoded pulses traveling through hyperspace itself, patterns of energy that no machine could interpret. They weren't random. Every few years, another system detected them. The signals grew stronger, resonating with a frequency that matched only one thing ever recorded in galactic history: the energy signature of the human fleet. The scientific community tried to study it, but the results defied logic. Each signal was identical, perfectly synchronized across thousands of light years. No known technology could achieve that. Then, one day, the pulses stopped. For an entire year, silence returned. The galaxy held its breath once more, waiting. On Veltor, now reborn as the capital of the Accord, the descendants of the old council held a gathering in the Great Hall. The speaker's bloodline had survived, though only one descendant remained: a woman named Ceres Valtor, the youngest speaker in recorded history. She stood before the assembly, her voice steady and strong. The signals were not warnings, she said. They were invitations. Murmurs filled the chamber, disbelief mixing with fear. Invitations to what? Someone asked. Ceres raised her gaze to the stars projected above them. To witness something that will change everything again. Within hours, telescopes across the galaxy reported the impossible. The black void beyond the galactic core began to ripple, bending like liquid. And then, out of that darkness, came light. A single bright pulse that spread through space faster than any explosion. Worlds thousands of light years apart saw it at the same time. When it reached Veltor, the sky above the planet split open, revealing a vast construct, so enormous it dwarfed the planet itself. It wasn't a ship, nor a weapon. It was a ring, spinning slowly, glowing with a pale blue light. Its surface shimmered like glass, but deep within, one could see shapes: cities, continents, oceans. It was a world within a machine. The people of Veltor stared in awe. "It's them," someone whispered. "The humans." The name spread through the planet like a heartbeat. Every communication network across the galaxy flickered on, displaying the same message: the Accord has learned. The cycle is ready. No one knew what it meant, but they all understood who it came from. The humans were back, and this time, they were not hiding. A few days later, the first human vessel emerged from the ring. Unlike the old black dreadnoughts, this one shone with silver and blue light. Its hull seemed to be made of living crystal, its movements smooth as water. When it entered orbit around Veltor, the entire planet went silent. There were no defense systems, no armies, no threats, only anticipation. The ship's surface opened, and a beam of light descended to the planet's surface, forming a platform in the center of the council square. Then, from that light, a human stepped forward. He was tall, calm, and impossibly old, his eyes carrying the weight of eternity. He wore no armor, no weapon, just a simple dark suit. The air itself seemed to hum around him, alive with unseen energy. Ceres Valtor stepped out to meet him, her heart pounding. "You came back," she said quietly. The human nodded. "You invited us," he replied. His voice was gentle, but it carried across the square as though the world itself wanted everyone to hear. "The galaxy has remembered its lessons. You built peace. Now, you must protect it." Ceres bowed her head. "We will. But, where have you been? For all these years?" The human's eyes softened. "Beyond the edge," he said. "We watched as your kind struggled to rebuild. We waited for the day when peace no longer required our shadow." He looked up at the sky, at the bright stars surrounding the ring. "That day has come. But peace must not depend on memory alone, it must be taught." The Accord listened. For weeks, the humans shared knowledge. They taught the secrets of energy harmony, the merging of technology and nature, the balance between creation and destruction. They showed the galaxy how to heal the damage it had done to itself. Their ships traveled to barren worlds and made them bloom again. To dying stars, they gave life. But even as they gifted wonders, there was still mystery in their silence. No one dared ask how they had become what they were, how they had transcended death, or what lay beyond the edge where they had gone. Then, one night, as Ceres stood on her balcony watching the human ship above Veltor, the same human who had first appeared came to her once more. His expression was calm, but his words were grave. "The galaxy will soon face another trial," he said. "Something older than us, older than your council, older even than light itself. It awakens in the dark void between realities." Ceres froze. "What is it?" she whispered. The human's eyes glowed faintly. "The first silence," he said. "The force that once erased entire civilizations before your kind ever walked the stars. We held it back once. Now, it stirs again." Fear gripped Ceres's heart. Can it be stopped? The human looked at her with something that almost resembled sadness. "It can be delayed. But it cannot be destroyed. Not yet. You will have to stand beside us this time. The galaxy will fight not as subjects, but as equals." The next day, the humans gathered every leader of every species within the ring. There, they revealed what they called the Shadow Archive, a record of everything the galaxy had forgotten, including the existence of a cosmic entity that consumed civilizations when they reached their peak of pride and unity. The old council's fall had delayed it. Humanity's rise had angered it. And now, it was coming again, drawn by the light of the new accord. But humanity was ready. Their fleets, hidden in the folds of reality, began to emerge once more. They were larger now, not weapons of war, but shields of light, designed to protect rather than destroy. For the first time, the galaxy saw what true unity looked like. Humans and aliens working side by side, building defenses around worlds, preparing for the unknown. In the final meeting before the coming storm, Ceres looked at the human leader and asked the question everyone feared to voice. "If we fail, what happens then?" The man smiled faintly. "Then we will do what we always do," he said. "We will rise again, and we will remember everything." That night, as the great ring shone brighter than any star, the galaxy held its breath once more. For the first time in history, they weren't fearing humanity, they were trusting them. But deep in the void beyond known space, something vast and ancient began to move. Its hunger stirred, its shadow reached toward the light. And somewhere in that darkness, the humans were already waiting.